All right, welcome to the Sports Guys, another edition of Weekend Recap. We are coming a couple days later than normal. We wanted to have all of the playoff days all finish up and be able to report to you guys on all of them, and they were epic. We had a lot of great games we're going to have to talk about. We had the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday slate of college and pro playoff games we got to talk about. We have a lot of other things to get into as well. How you doing, Robbie?
I'm doing really well. Love that 5 days of straight, just crazy consequential football. I was in heaven.
I was too. There's so many games, and I watched most of them completely all the way through. The ones I didn't, like if I went to the store or to a restaurant or something, the cool thing is they were playing everywhere you went. So
True.
it's like I barely missed anything. I missed maybe a commercial because I'd walk into a store and it was on. I'd walk into a restaurant, it was on. So
I noticed too, my phone kept burning down to 0 because I was watching Hulu on my phone. It was really
great.
funny, but I watched so much football in 5 days. It was crazy.
What were your takeaways from the two semifinal games in college?
Really exciting games. It was fun watching all those NFL players. It was,
Yeah.
I think,
NFL light, yeah.
pretty predictable. I definitely felt like the two teams I thought were going to win did. Watching them clash was cool. Just really exciting games. And really kind of both games were either back and forth or had moments where you weren't sure. It wasn't like a blowout from the beginning and they just rolled from there. They were good games. There was a good product on the field, and it was exciting. College kids playing their hearts out. A lot of talented players. Some of the NFL players really separated themselves, which was cool to watch them just sort of a little better than the people that they're blocking or trying to tackle them or what have you. But
My takeaway was you went through this epic regular season. We talked so much about it this year on the Sports Guys. We had so much fun with it. And then you had this epic run up to the 12-team playoff. You had a great first round. Some of the games disappointing, but still a lot of fun to watch. And I felt like watching the semifinals, we were watching the four best teams. That's how it felt to me. It came down to, in both games, I think, the better team won, and it was the better coach. It was the better quarterback. In the case of Drew Aller, he didn't throw one pass to a wide receiver the entire game. They couldn't run the ball as well as Notre Dame, and they did get one touchdown from one of their backs. But for the most part, they fought hard. I thought that they hung in the game as badly as their quarterback was playing, but Notre Dame was the better team. And I think Freeman's a really excellent up-and-coming coach. I think several NFL teams are going to be looking at him. So
no question.
That was my take there. And then Ohio State, I think, is just better than Texas, and they were really the whole year. And we saw that on display. And I think yours really holds back Texas. That's the way I look at it.
Judkins and Henderson should be first-round picks, the running backs for Ohio State. Unreal.
And several other receivers, too.
Yeah, all three of their receivers. They're just packed with NFL.
It's true. Ryan Day kind of got off the schneid a little bit. He's had a lot of criticism. He's 0-4 against Michigan. And he had a couple visits to the college football playoff and had been first-round exits several years in a row. Finally got off the schneid and got to the final game. So this is big for Ryan Day. I feel like he's got to win it for his legacy.
I don't know if he does, because I'll tell you, I think Michigan, it's looking like Michigan's probably going to be in a little bit of trouble now with the NCAA investigation wrapping up. So they're going to have some sanctions, some problems. And so that's going to just leave Ohio State a green light for probably domination for a little while. So we'll see. I don't wish it on Michigan. I like them, but I just think they kind of messed up here. A lot of deleted emails and hidden, and looks like some shenanigans were going on.
I will say the Texas defense, you called it one of the best in the country, and they held that team in the game, the entire game. And it was basically a 21-14 game with Texas at the 1 yard line to tie it, and couldn't get it in against the best red zone defense in the country, which is Ohio State. So, and then that kid makes an incredible play against his ex-roommate with a strip sack, fumble, pick up, scoop, and score. One of the most epic touchdowns in college playoff history.
Yeah.
So that was just amazing to watch. But that was a great game. I mean, it was a close game to the end.
Yeah. Real close. Both of them were close. Both of them had moments where you weren't sure. Penn State got out to a big lead. I mean, not big lead, but a substantial lead on the field, but the score was only 10-0. So it was kind of wild how Notre Dame hung in there, even though they were getting pounded on. It was only 10-0. That was
Well,
kind of
then
part of the
and then
problem.
Notre Dame had that field goal right at the end of the half, and I know you're gonna talk about that when we get into the game,
Yeah.
break it down, but that was really huge for them. And then we said that we thought Freeman was the better coach and that he was gonna go into halftime and make adjustments, and boy, did he ever, because they
Hmm.
came out firing. So, I think it's gonna be
Yeah.
a really great final, and we're gonna just let you guys know who are watching tonight, we are gonna be tackling that final game in a short episode a little later this week, so be looking for that one.
Yep.
So, heading over to the NFL, what were your takeaways on the 6 games we saw Saturday, Sunday, and Monday?
Um, where I was the most wrong was the Bills game. They steamrolled that Denver D. I thought that number one ranked defense was going to be able to hang in there, but the way that the Bills just had this very balanced offense, they'd run the ball, throw the ball, run the ball, run the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball. They kept Denver off balance. They kept moving the ball really nicely, and then I was shocked at Buffalo's offensive line play. That was
I
the
had
most
no idea
surprising
their
thing.
offensive line was that good. Their offensive line is so solid.
The whole NFL playoff so far, that's been my biggest surprise, is how
Yeah,
well their offensive line played.
mhm,
They were unbelievable. So,
that's right.
but Ravens pounding the Steelers, not a surprise. Um, Texans, I called. That wasn't a
You did
surprise
call
to
that one.
me.
You did call that one. I thought
I,
the Chargers would win that game by a field goal. I thought it'd be a good game because it was at Houston, but, I
Texans
didn't.
defense is one of the best in the NFL, and nobody knows that. Nobody's talking about that. So, Eagles, Packers, not a surprise. The Commanders, I called, even though I felt like that was a real good game.
Really
That
good
was
game.
a tough bare knuckle. And then Vikings getting crushed by the Rams. I didn't see that either. So,
The Vikings offensive line played literally the opposite from the Bills offensive line.
right.
They were
Right.
just Swiss cheese all night, and I
It
just
was,
felt
it
bad
was
for Donald because he's not that mobile and active, he's kind of a statue,
A lot of
and,
people are blaming Darnold by himself in that game, and honestly,
no.
there were a lot more problems than just Darnold. He was not a solution, but he was not the problem. The problem was they were getting whipped in the trenches, and then
Although
all other problems came off that problem.
although John Gruden said that too, he said it wasn't just all Darnold, but he did
Mhm.
say there were a couple of those sacks that they had on him that he stepped into that a really experienced
Yeah,
quarterback shouldn't step into.
more importantly,
He caused a couple.
more precisely, he held the ball too long, so that the pockets are collapsing, and you step up into guys that are swarming in, and you can't hold the ball that long. But the problem was they had Jefferson bracketed, and the other two guys weren't very open. So the other two guys are used to seeing second and third and fourth corners, and just the way the young Rams D was playing, it just they were too much to handle. It's kind of wild. I think it's the second youngest defense in the
Mhm,
NFL, and I think they are the best up and coming defense for the next few years.
mhm,
They have absolutely drilled all their draft picks on defense. They've missed a few on offense, but the Rams have been crushing their defensive picks.
mhm.
They have an incredible set of young players on defense,
Verse
and
looks like he's kind of the next
Verse and all
Micah
these
Parsons.
guys they're still on their rookie contracts. They don't cost anything. They're playing out of their mind. They all look like, Micah Parsons out there or somebody along those
Mhm,
lines. Uh, and they're really cheap players because they're in rookie contracts, and they're all ferocious, hungry. And I was looking through stats, and I was expecting to see them at the top of the NFL, but really they've
mhm,
just come alive in the playoffs. And so it's been kind of surprising how statistically they're number 22 or something like that.
mhm.
But that is not the number 22 defense out on that
No,
field right
not
now.
the way they played, no.
They're top 3 or 4. I mean, they
And
are
then the
crushing.
Vikings defense, which played so well all year, kinda collapsed the last 3 weeks. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. They really
Yeah,
became kinda soft, and they
they
didn't
got
really have
kind
a
of
lot of
steamrolled
injuries.
against the Lions, and then so they've been having problems, but most importantly, the Vikings offense has been the problem. And it's really come down to they're not running the ball. and their offensive line is not holding up against the pass. So they can't move the ball. So they're getting no points the last 2 weeks, and they're just getting crushed by really good
And you
competition.
see O'Donnell on the sideline just keep putting his head in his hands, and it's almost
Yeah.
like their offense is broken, and he can't figure out how to fix it the last 2 weeks.
It was pretty wild
Okay.
because Detroit was blitzing quite a lot against
62%. Yeah.
against the Rams.
Mhm.
And so they
You
gave
mean
the
you mean
blueprint for
you mean
Shula.
you mean against the Vikings?
No, the Lions were blitzing a lot. And so they gave the blueprint to Shula, who used that blueprint and started blitzing all over the place. The Rams have not blitzed much this year. So the Vikings were not ready for it, even though they should have expected that the film would dictate
Right.
from the week before, you need to blitz these guys to get Darnold really flustered and throwing it all over the place and holding too long and panicking and seeing ghosts like he did it with the Jets. So Shula did an amazing job as the defense coordinator of the Rams to replicate what had worked against them before, and it worked again. They were
Don't you think
absolutely
don't you think his
all over.
profile was elevated quite a bit in that game, Chris
No
Shula?
question. Don Shula's grandson, Dave Shula's son, uh, had an outstanding night. His team was all over the place. The Vikings couldn't do anything. Jefferson couldn't get off the line. They couldn't run the ball. Darnold was swimming. His head was just swimming. And they were blitzing from everywhere. They would constantly mix up what their coverages, what they were doing, blitzes from corner, then safety, then linebackers would come up, then they would back out, and
Yeah,
they were so confused. They were so well done. It was crazy. So anyway,
it's
that
true.
one was surprising how well and how effective the Rams defense played.
So why do you think that 5 of the 6 games were total blowouts and not competitive at all? I would have thought just the opposite. You get into these games with all these great teams that have made the playoffs, but it really feels like a lot of the bad teams on the lower end of the playoff bracket kinda got exposed in this weekend. I mean, they were against the better teams.
Um, it's a game of matchups, and I think that some of these games, the teams didn't match up well, even though they're good teams and they belong there. Um, I think each one was inexplicable for different reasons. Um, I like to talk about how at the end of the half, uh, in a lot of games I've watched over the last few weeks, I've noticed that when a team scores something right at the end of half, even if they're down, let's say they're down 17-0, and they go down and they score a touchdown right before half, and they go in at 17-7. Somehow they come out from the second half and they start a comeback because they believe we've just done something positive. We're going in for halftime. Halftime adjustments are happening. We believe we're starting to come back. But in some of these games, right before half, instead of the team that's down scoring a last second field goal and only being down 10-3 or something like that, they would the teams would get an interception or a fumble return for a
Yeah,
touchdown or
I know.
and so it was the opposite of having sort of a momentum swing. It was like a reinforcement of how bad it was going. And
Mhm.
so it's almost like the team's wills got broken right before halftime, and the halftime rah-rah speech didn't work because, hey, we just got thumped right before we came in here, and we're so
Or
smart.
or is it just as simple as quarterback, coach, and offensive line? Maybe it's just as simple as those 3 elements.
Well, I would say
And
that everyone keeps saying that if you look at the quarterback and the coach, you can say who's going to win in the playoffs. I don't agree. I think you have to have that's too simplistic. What I feel like is quarterback, coach, and defense. If you none of these teams that advanced have anything but a stellar defense. They all have an incredible defense. So the Bills' defense has been playing lights out. So you have good coaching, Josh Allen, and a great defense. You've got the Eagles' defense has been unbelievable this year. It's not all defense because otherwise the Broncos would have advanced. But rookie quarterback, they still got some growing to do. Um, but the ones that did advance, their defense has been playing lights out, and the Commanders' defense has been playing, above its talent level. I think for several weeks now.
you think
So
about how remarkable it is what Daniels has done this year. He goes 12-5 as a rookie. He goes on the road in the playoffs against Baker Mayfield, who has multiple playoff wins in a hostile environment
Yeah.
on the road in the playoffs and ends up winning that game, getting them in position to kick the winning field goal, which was a doink, by the way. So it's really exciting. But I'm not sure we're totally appreciating enough how special this kid is.
Well, I think we are. I'm seeing I'm seeing articles talking about he might be the greatest rookie quarterback of all time. And statistically speaking, I think he's one or two in percentage of completions, but he's not. He's considered sixth, I think, of all time. But there's some mix of stats where, depending on what you want to look at, he's definitely in the conversation for best rookie quarterback of all time. So I didn't really realize that until I started reading some articles on that. So it made me take a step back and appreciate he is having that kind of a season where
He
he's
has more no
carrying
punt,
a team on his back.
he has more no punt, no turnover games than 6 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, including
Yeah.
Tom Brady, Jim Kelly, many others.
Yeah.
Dan Marino. A lot of those guys had 2 in their
If you're
career.
to
and he had
summarize
3.
it, you could say that he's having a completely inexplicably good year that nobody's really that aware of.
Would you agree better than CJ Stroud's year last year?
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think Stroud took over a team that had been building for 3 years. Commanders haven't been building for 3 years.
Right.
He came to a team that was a mess last year.
Mhm. Total
And
mess.
they had new ownership, knew this, knew that, knew everything. There's no building.
New GM. Yep.
New GM, new
Mhm.
director of talent acquisition or whatever it is. The guy they brought
Well,
over from the Lakers, I think it was.
all I can say is
Who just understands about building teams. Doesn't even matter what sport it's in. So
all I can say is I loved every minute of those 5 days, and I'm looking forward to this next weekend coming up with more substantial games that we're going to talk about. Let's go ahead and take a look at the material.
let's do it.
All right, we want to take a moment to bring a special message to you from our sponsor of tonight, and that is SgZ&x with their product Total Tea. And Total Tea is a product that is made of a natural culinary herb, which is Tresnor. And Tresnor is a product that actually gives you 53% more energy, 48% more drive, 44% more muscle build, better sleep, and better repair of your body when you're sleeping. This is a reaction to what happens to most men when they hit 40 or over, and that is that their testosterone levels dip, and it's a natural thing. And so all of us who are over 40, like Rob and me, need this type of product to help us give a little boost. So Robbie, tell us a little bit about the product. You've been on it for about 5 weeks now. What do you think?
I've really enjoyed it. This product has done a lot. I've felt excellent. My energy level is noticeably higher. One thing that I was surprised at pleasantly was the middle of the day when you get that lull. I'm not getting that. I'm real clear in the middle of the day, and honestly, it's been one of the coolest things. Put on a little weight over the holidays, even though I was still taking this, but I started eating more sensibly, and I've dropped a couple pounds since. So I'm kind of getting back to normal. And this is an amazing product. It really makes me feel good. It makes me feel energy. I'm sleeping really well. I'm sleeping through the night. I was having a lot of troubles with my sleep last fall, so it's been a real awesome thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've had a similar experience. I think I've seen my sleep improve tremendously. I'm getting the in the sleep repair to my body. When I get little nicks and things like that, it's repairing a lot faster than it used to. I'm the same way. I'm not getting that afternoon lull. I'm feeling tremendous energy all day long, which is really great. And I don't know, it's just been a fantastic product for me, and I'm glad it's been the same for you.
Yeah, it
So,
has.
so all you guys who are listening tonight, subscribers, check out SgZ&x Total Tea. You can find it on the internet. You can actually find it at newgenixsamples.com. And you can get a 14-day free sample. They'll send it straight to your home. You can try it yourself and tell us what you think. Drop us a comment.
You'll feel
Thanks.
great if you do.
Thanks so much. The CFB NFL Playoffs. You can see on the left there the trophy that Notre Dame and Ohio State are battling for. This game's going to take place on Monday night, the 20th. That's a day that a lot of people have off, so I'm sure we're going to get a lot of viewership for that game. we'll break that game down a little bit more in this program, and then we're going to do detailed program a little later in the week. But you can see that really awesome trophy there that they're competing for. On the right side there, you see the Lombardi Trophy, which we have 8 teams left competing for. You've got your AFC contenders and your NFC contenders. And then you see the 3 of the best quarterbacks that are still in the playoffs there at the bottom screen. So that's what we have to look forward to coming up here, all these substantial games that are going to hit our docket.
Mm-hmm.
So the first game we got to talk about was Thursday night. So this is almost a week ago now, Notre Dame and Penn State. This game was a really competitive game. We talked about Penn State came out hot, got a nice lead going, and then Notre Dame made all the adjustments and came back and won the game in the second half, 27-24. You look at the numbers, and actually the numbers of the quarterbacks look relatively similar. Aller's was a little bit lower with only 135 yards, and we talked about he didn't even hit one of his receivers. He kept going to Warren, of course. A lot of people would do that, but this was the Orange Bowl. Leonard, like I said, had a little bit better game. He did have 2 interceptions, however. He gets a little bit loose sometimes. In terms of rushing the ball, Notre Dame had a little bit of a subpar rushing day for them, but both of these leading rushers, Love and Leonard, both had a touchdown. On the Penn State side, Singleton had a humongous game with 84 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then for receiving, Greathouse had the game of his life.
He was unbelievable.
Nobody heard of the guy, and he comes out with 7 catches, 105 yards, and a touchdown. And then Tyler Warren, of course, was the best receiver for Penn State. So what were your thoughts about this game overall?
So Jeremiah Love was playing hurt. He had a knee brace on. He was really just doing the best he could. There were times where he was out of the game when he normally would have been in. So they struggled running the ball. But Greathouse was unbelievable. Put on a clinic. He was converting first downs in heavy traffic with really good defense all over him. He had the most beautiful touchdown juke. He juked the guy off the line.
That was awesome. Literally made him fall down.
The corner fell down. Then he's running free, and he's in so much space. He jukes again, and the safety, who's the only guy left, slips down because he's so juked out of his cleats that Greathouse just scampers on in. He was awesome. I think
by the way, Greathouse,
take a look at him.
He's definitely going to be on NFL radars. You have to think Greathouse is going to show that replay to his grandchildren one day.
And by the way, Jeremiah Love's touchdown was awesome.
It was.
It wasn't very far. I don't remember what yard line they were on, but it was 3 or 4 yard line or something. It was goal line, and they pitched it to him, and he took it and was just getting tackled, and he'd shake a guy off, and he'd slam into another guy, and he'd shake him off. And then he was getting tackled, and he dives, and he crosses the goal line. It was pure heart.
It was fantastic.
I want that guy on my team.
Me too. And by the way, this kid Singleton for Penn State is a fantastic back too.
He had a great day.
He had a couple really nice runs, and I have to
3
think
touchdowns. He had 3 TDs.
He declared for the draft about 2 hours after the game was over. So Singleton's going to be on NFL Sundays next year as well. So we'll watch him. But the best player in the game, of course, was Tyler Warren, who we've been saying for a while now is Brock Bowers 2.0. This kid is just unbelievable. So really competitive game, awesome. Great game.
He has rushing yardage. He has receiving yardage. He lines up in every receiving position, every tight end position. He is such an important weapon. He is Brock Bowers. Like he is everything to this team.
He really is.
You need to get 3 great players to replace him.
You know, I felt like this was an epic game between 2 really good teams that had good rosters. Aller, like we talked about, really disappointed. He did not play well. And I felt like this was a coaching mismatch. I really feel like Freeman was the better coach.
You know, I'm gonna give a lot of the credit to Notre Dame's defense instead of blaming Aller. I don't want to give him no blame, but I felt like Notre Dame's D played well, and they made some real big plays. They made some really good plays like that. For instance, that pivotal interception at the end that kind of sealed the deal, where Penn State threw it and got it picked, and then Notre Dame took it down and kicked the field goal. Aller was trying to throw the ball away. And the Notre Dame defender just made an incredible play diving to catch it off before it hit the ground. So a lot of credit there. I mean, he wasn't throwing a bad pass. He was trying to throw it away, apparently. I mean, that's
No,
what he's saying. So
it's true.
a lot of credit to Notre Dame's defense, I think.
What about the point about the coaching mismatch?
Um, I don't know. This
Freeman versus Franklin.
game came down to a last-second field goal. I think Freeman is an awesome young coach. I'm one of those guys who doesn't really take anything away from Franklin. I think he's fine. He hasn't won a huge game yet, but a lot of coaches haven't won a huge game yet because they haven't been on stage. So
Doesn't it feel like he's got that kind of monkey on his back, though? It's been like 4 or 5 years now, and they're waiting for him to win a big game.
that's the narrative. I don't really buy that one. I don't buy the narrative. I think he's done a great job of taking Penn State, that's always sort of second fiddle to Michigan and Ohio State. Whether they like it or not, I think they're definitely a second fiddle team. He's taken them up to their level. So I think he's done a pretty good job, to be honest. I know there's a lot of criticism out there. I hear it, and I'm not sure I buy into it. I think Franklin's a pretty good coach. I'd like to have him.
How exciting is it for a team to go on to the final with a last-second field goal? I mean, that was an amazing way to end the game.
It was a great game. It was a great game. I mean, it was sad that Aller threw that ball away and it got scooped up. For him, it was sad. But what a great defensive play. There were great plays all over the place here.
What did you think of the watching the Notre Dame lacrosse team celebrate when they saw the field goal go through?
That was fun. Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, because they have that the wide receiver who plays lacrosse also, one of their teammates.
Next game we had was Ohio State, Texas. This was an epic game we were really looking forward to. Like we talked about, it really was close all the way down the stretch. And it was 21-14, and Texas had driven all the way down. They had 2nd and 1 on the goal line, and they decide inexplicably to do a pitch play against the fastest defense in college.
Prior to that, there was a run up the middle on first down, and it got so stuffed, I think, that he lost his nerve. I'll defend a little bit. Like, I understand the reasoning, but I wouldn't do this. I would have just slammed it up the middle 3 or 4 times. I might have taken one shot throwing to my tight end, but honestly, if you look at Ohio State's record against goal line stands this year and in the red zone, they are monsters. And Sarkisian saw the film on these guys stoning some major league teams.
But you can't tell me that if you bring in Arch Manning and you run him 3 times up the middle with a tush push, they couldn't get one of those to go across. I just don't believe it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I would have never
so much
gone
less risky than a pitch play that loses 7 yards.
Apparently, all the pundits and professionals were saying the only way you can attack Ohio State's defense in the red zone on the goal line is to go wide. Now, that might be true. That means you have to throw a screen because you have to be out there one-on-one with a corner or something. You cannot run it sideways.
Right.
7 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
You can't.
Anything good is going to happen.
That's right, because they have the fastest linebackers in the country.
Fastest everything, defensive ends, linebackers.
Right.
They got the best defensive player in the country, Caleb Downs, who's literally a safety who's allowed to just roam. So he's
interestingly enough, I have a lot of criticisms for Quinn Ewers, and I feel like he's been holding this team back all year. He didn't have that bad a game, actually.
No,
overall.
He was okay.
He was okay. Will Howard did outplay him, however, as you see
Yeah.
the numbers here, with 289 yards, a touchdown, and a 90 QBR. And Ewers came in with similar numbers, but a 69 QBR. Both of them had an interception. So I thought, just watching the game, the eye test, Will Howard had the better game. Looking at the rushing numbers, of course, you talked about the two-headed monster that Ohio State has with Henderson and Judkins. Judkins had 2 short touchdowns, played really well, and Henderson had a couple great runs. And then on the Texas side, of course, Wisner and Blue were their 2 backs, but neither one could really get much traction.
Yeah, they didn't really have much yardage.
And then most of the damage by both teams was done through the air. So you had Ohio State with Tate and Henderson and Egbuka. These guys are all NFL players. And then Texas with Blue and Golden and Gunnar Helm. A lot of great talent on that side of the ball, too. Matter of fact, both Blue and Golden both declared for the draft after the game. So both of them are coming out. So what other thoughts do you have about this game? It was really close until that last big play.
I mean, it was a fantastic game. Obviously, I understand why Sarkisian said I need to go test the outside of the defense. I can't go up the middle on these guys. That he tried one time and gave up. I kind of understand why I wouldn't have done that myself. I'm not just saying that in hindsight. I believe the dumbest thing college teams do is go to shotgun when you need 1 yard. That's first of all. And second, this is a case where it's kind of like the same thing. If you're going to get the ball and run sideways, it's like you're in shotgun. So to me, testing the outside of the Ohio State defense, the only way you do that is a quick screen. Otherwise, you have to run it up the middle or throw to a tight end who's breaking loose into the end
What about
zone.
like a tackle
Or
eligible?
roll out, because then a running play, because you can always throw the ball away if somebody's coming up hot. So
What about a tackle eligible play where they do a jump pass, kind of like Tim Tebow did in the national championship
sure,
game?
yeah, if it's there, you do it. If it's not, you just hang on to it and slam into the line, or you throw it away. I don't like that call, not just because it didn't work, but you can put me on record. I'd never like running wide on a 1 or 2 yard line on a fast defense. If it's a strong defense that's not quick, maybe, yes. But if they're faster than you are, you're not going to run wide on them. Like, that's just dumb. I
Well,
wouldn't run wide on them on 3rd and 1 either. I'd run right up the middle, just pound it at them. You'll find a soft spot eventually.
what's interesting is that play, of course, didn't work. They lost 7 yards. Then the next play after that, Ewers throws a ball and it gets deflected by the defender, who the next play after that would strip sack him and scoop and score, and used to be his college roommate when he was at Ohio State.
Yeah.
It was just such a weird exchange. And that kid, by the way, is going to be going NFL as well. He'd been there 5 years.
Jack Sawyer
Jack
was
Sawyer, yeah.
Ewers' roommate at Ohio State.
Right.
So he was happy for him. Obviously, Ewers was disappointed, but he couldn't hate on the play that he did. It was such a special play.
What an
It's going to
incredible
be remembered for a long time,
Yeah.
especially if Ohio State goes on and wins the whole thing.
Right.
That'll be one of the pivotal moments that they'll celebrate.
That was a cool
forever.
moment because they kind of shook hands and hug a little bit because they were roommates and they're actually friends, and apparently they still talk all the time. So that was cool. And then the other cool moment was when he hugged his coach, Ryan Day, because he was Ryan Day's first recruit 5 years ago when Ryan Day got the job.
That's right.
so
And remember this, that happened when it was 21-14 and Texas had the ball on the 1 yard line. So it was about to be 21 all. You know,
Right.
I mean, it was 1 yard away from being 21 all. So that was huge.
Huge.
When you look at 28-14, it looks more like not a blowout, but a handling. And that touchdown was simply a matter of one amazing play by one player, basically.
This was a really close game. Really
Yep.
close game, and so was the other one. So we couldn't have had two better semifinals, I think.
Yeah. I did feel like Ohio State was the better team,
Me too.
but the scoreboard didn't always show that. So, and then at the end
Interesting.
it did. So because of that amazing Jack Sawyer play.
Interesting enough, Notre Dame and Ohio State in these two bowl games are the first teams ever to win two bowl trophies in the same season. Because, you know, we have this new system now where there's a bowl every round. So it's kind of strange that these two teams have already taken two trophies home to their trophy case back at college campus. And, of course, have a third trophy on the line, which is the one you see there in the bottom right. So kind of wild that the new system's set up so that you can win three trophies in the same year.
Let's just say that a lot of these schools are going to have to build more trophy cases.
That's right. They're bringing a lot of hardware home. So I thought it was a great game. I'm looking forward to the final very much.
Yeah. Yep.
So talking about that final, it's Monday night, the 20th at 7:30. The Ohio State and Notre Dame. Notre Dame is technically the home team in this one. It's at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. And this is the matchup predictor by ESPN.com. They put it through an analytical cruncher that takes all of their stats and everything else, and it came out with 55.3% probability of an Ohio State win. So any thoughts about that matchup predictor? I mean, it's just a computer, but kind of interesting.
I think it's hard to say. I think if Notre Dame can hang in there and score when they're in the red zone, they could win this game against a team that is number one in the Big Ten on red zone defense and one of the top in the country. And so if Notre Dame's able to get a few shots and get in, then they can kind of get Ohio State out of its element. And a lot like I was hearing with Texas, if you can survive the first quarter with Ohio State and just play with them.
Fast start.
And
You need
hang
a
with
fast start against Ohio State.
and,
Yep.
and slow them down a little. Also, if Notre Dame can end the first half with something positive going into the locker room, it kind of propels people more into the second half from what I've seen this year, in previous years too, but I've really noticed it this year. The momentum carries over. And so it's rare when a team does something really good at the end of the first half and comes out and isn't good in the beginning of the second half. So that momentum carries over, good and bad. If you do something terrible right before the half, what I've seen in a lot of these games is blowout city. When you come back out, you're demoralized.
My feeling on this game is they need to take the model. Notre Dame needs to take the model that a lot of the NFL teams did this past weekend, including the Commanders and others, and that is hold the ball, run it. Riley Leonard, Love, and others, just hold the ball and not give the ball to the Ohio State offense, and just hold it as long as you can, because what that does is that takes the superior team off the field. And
I agree.
a lot of the teams this weekend in the NFL did that and were successful by holding the ball 42 minutes, 40 minutes.
And while I'm scared of Ohio State's defensive line, I think they have NFL all the way across. I'm more scared of the playmakers they have back there, including Caleb Downs.
Right.
I think Ohio State can really make you pay. They have star athletes at the all the secondary and linebacker positions. So
Absolutely.
I'm taking my chances. I'm taking my chances running Jeremiah Love, and hopefully he's healed up a little bit. I can live with it if he's just unable to move the ball.
If I'm Freeman and his staff, I build a game plan that is all about ball possession, running the ball, short controlled passes to the tight end, running with Riley Leonard to pick up first downs, and I just keep the ball out of Ohio State's hands.
And take a couple shots with Greathouse.
And have a good first quarter. Make sure you're not down 14-0.
Yeah.
And just give
Don't
yourself
let the wheels come off by doing anything dangerous in the first quarter.
So looking at the NFL playoffs, we already talked about some of these epic games. This first one was the most surprising to me, and that is that the Houston Texans defense really stepped up in this game. They were really unbelievable with pick sixes all over the place, and they made Herbert look really pedestrian. They had a lot of pressure on him. The Chargers' offensive line couldn't hold up. You look at the stats, Herbert had 242 yards, but he was under 50% completion percentage. He had one touchdown and he had 4 interceptions. And he had a couple really bad ones, kind of throwing across his chest and throwing across the field and wobbly passes and getting picked. And it was just like one of those horrific games you just pray you don't have in the playoffs. CJ Stroud, the opposite, really solid ball control, 282 yards with a touchdown and a pick. Had a pretty solid rating. Played well, really played well at home and was complimentary with his defense. Rushing the ball, LA couldn't really get anything going running the ball, whereas Joe Mixon had a huge day, his best day in the playoffs ever. 106 yards and a touchdown. And then on the receiving side, the only guy who could do anything for the Chargers was Ladd McConkey. He had a couple of really huge gains, including one long touchdown.
Yeah, he had 197 yards.
Yeah, he had an 86-yard touchdown. So Nico Collins had a big day, and a couple of other guys for Houston had a big day as well. So what were your thoughts about this game?
So what I felt like was there were 4 main stars for the Texans. Stroud played great. He also had 42 yards rushing on top of a very solid performance of 282 yards, a nice completion percentage, 1 touchdown, one interception. He played nicely. He played like a star quarterback that you want. Mixon had the day you're talking about, 106 yards and a touchdown. So they ran the ball effectively. Nico Collins, 122 yards and a touchdown. So they moved the ball through the air, on the ground, their quarterback running when he needed to. They played great. So that's 3 stars. The 4th star was their defense. And that's how this team is built. They need their offensive stars to do some damage, and they need their defense to break the will of the other team. And I think they're a dangerous team because they have good coaching, quarterback, and defense. And so even though I think they're a few players away from being able to do it all, I think nobody really wants any piece of
And
them.
they can run the ball, and they have a number 1 receiver. So
They have balance. They have a star running back, a star receiver, and a star at quarterback. That's what you want. That's really what you're going for. Why was Dallas so mediocre this year? They couldn't run the ball. So, even though they have a star at receiver and they think they have a star at quarterback, which I don't think they do, but he's serviceable. They couldn't run the ball. That they were lacking on offense all year long.
I was feeling pretty good about the Chargers in this game because they were on the road, yes, but they also were on the road in a dome with a turf that's very similar to the turf they play on. So I felt like the environment was going to be the same as what they're used to. And then I felt like they were playing really well. Harbaugh had Harbaugh ball going. And I just didn't anticipate seeing Herbert play this badly. I mean, he was just horrific. Yeah. He just kept hurting his team over and over.
You know what, though? Just tons of credit to the Texans' defense. I mean, when I looked through all the statistical categories I was looking at pretty much for the whole year, their defense was really underrated. They were amazing. They were at the top of every category, and they were dominating, and nobody thought of them that way. That was the one defense that nobody talks about. And I kind of couldn't believe some of the stats I was looking at, and therefore I thought they could win this decisively because I picked it because of their defense, and that is why they won. They got 4 picks. They had 5 tackles for loss and 4 sacks. I mean, they were just harassing Herbert. And you can blame the offensive line if you want, but they were kind of coming from everywhere. I don't know what the offensive line could have really done about it.
Yeah, but if you really look back at
some of these picks were incredible athletic performances, like
it's true.
Over the shoulder,
but a couple of them
wide receivers.
A couple of them he was throwing across his body, across the field, which every veteran quarterback should know not to do, especially against a good defense.
Well, it kind of goes back to that.
He did that multiple times.
Kind of goes back to that. If you look at a lot of veteran quarterbacks have terrible stats in the playoffs because they're forcing so much. You start to get down. You need your team to come out of the doldrum they're in. You're down a little bit. You force something, it gets worse. You start forcing more.
Is that your theory about why so many playoff games are blowouts? Because, on paper, this should be a good game. Like if they played 10 times, it'd be 5-5,
It'd probably be pretty good most of the time.
So my question is it blowouts because it's one and done and the down team gets desperate? Like the Broncos did the same thing. Like they were really desperate.
I heard today that I heard on ESPN they were talking about how cool would the NBA be if it was one and done games in the playoffs? That would be cool. I mean, it would matter more. Instead of watching the home team beat LeBron but by game 5, LeBron's going to have it under control back in his prime. The better team, the better team is going to eventually win. The first game that they lose, you're not even sweating it. But imagine if that was single elimination. That would put some juice. You lose a lot of TV games, and so revenue-wise, it wouldn't make sense.
Well, they're also talking about the fact that in the NBA, the regular season doesn't matter, and they can't figure out how to make it matter. Nobody cares.
Most people go into the playoffs, and then you have these long playoff series where a lot of times the better team loses game 1, and it doesn't even matter.
Hockey has a similar problem. A lot of these baseball, hockey, basketball, none of them have good regular seasons. Nobody cares until the playoffs. And so the NFL and college have found a way to make their regular seasons really count. And every game counts. So
and the playoffs are one and done. Like
I
you.
don't know how you get that. Is it just scarcity because there's so few
Mhm.
games,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah.
Um,
NFL's motto has always been leave them wanting more.
right. That's right.
And they do.
They
When the
do.
Super
Big
Bowl
time.
comes, I feel a little bit of depression set in. I
I
feel
know.
not depressed clinically, but I feel sad. I'm like, ugh, that
I
was
know.
it. Huh?
I
That's the
know.
game.
That's true.
And
All I know is Herbert has 2 playoff games under his belt now. He's a really good quarterback. He was horrific in both, and he's 0-2. So, he's
mm,
gotta go back to the drawing board and figure out, why it is that CJ Stroud's 2-0 and he's 0-2, and what can he do to get better? Because, yes, their roster isn't complete. I agree with that. They have a good defense, and he's making mistakes he shouldn't be making as a veteran.
I do
He
think
really
that
is.
the Chargers defense actually played really well. They had 3 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, a
Mhm.
pick, and 2 fumble recoveries.
Mhm.
But then Herbert would turn around and give the ball away. So, um, if he had taken better care of the ball, this would have been a good game.
Mhm.
I'm not
Agreed.
blaming it all on him. I'm just saying because what happened where the Texans D came up huge. They were putting
Yeah.
crazy amount of
And I'm
pressure, and
not
they had
putting it all
really
on
good
Herbert.
interception.
I'm giving Houston a lot of credit. I'm not putting it
Yeah,
all on him. All I'm saying is you can't have 4 turnovers on the road in the playoffs
no,
and win. Like, that
no,
doesn't work.
but the Chargers got 3 turnovers from the
True.
Texans, so
True.
they did what they could too. I mean, I'm pretty impressed with the Chargers defense. I think
No, it's good.
their running back, J.K. Dobbins, got 26 yards rushing, and he wasn't the problem, but not being able to run more than 26 yards is a problem.
This
Really
game
wrong.
was the most surprising game to me. I really thought this would be a field goal game either way, and that, it wouldn't be something like this, and it just kinda got away from the Chargers, and they couldn't bring it
I
back.
I did call the Vikings over the Rams, but I told you I was queasy going against Matthew Stafford.
Yes. You did.
Matthew Stafford and McVay are a real tough combination to deal with.
It's true.
And so I wasn't real confident in that pick. I wasn't confident in the Broncos over the Bills either. I just felt like maybe this would be an upset because the Broncos defense might be able to create problems for the Bills, and I was wrong about that. But
Mm.
um, I
Alright,
feel like the Vikings losing to the Rams was not a surprise, but getting blown out by the Rams, that was a surprise.
next game was Baltimore beat the Steelers 28-14, and this score looks closer than it really was. I mean, this was
Yeah,
an absolute blitzing by Baltimore. They pretty much blitzed them in the first half and then took their feet off the gas in the second half.
yeah.
Russell Wilson, his numbers look good with 270 and 2 touchdowns.
Mhm.
That doesn't show the story. I mean, he was very ineffective overall.
Yeah.
His team didn't support him. You see Najee Harris with 17 yards rushing. That's just not gonna get it done in the playoffs.
No. Mm-mm.
Um, Pickens had a decent day with 5 catches and
Oh,
87
yeah.
yards, and a touchdown, but again, just didn't feel like he was early in the season. He didn't feel
He wasn't
dominant.
enough by himself. There
Yeah,
was no help from anywhere else.
right. Whereas Lamar has 175 yards and 2 touchdowns, was incredibly efficient. He had a 132 rating. Derrick Henry goes off for 186 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is what you and I call that if they run like this, they're almost unbeatable.
Mhm.
And, Likely had a nice game. Andrews, they got two-headed monster at tight end. Um, what are your thoughts about this game, and what do you think the Steelers are gonna need to do to try to get more competitive next year?
Well, I don't think the Steelers have done well all year in the sack department, and therefore, I don't think they haven't had enough pressure. I know that they have Watt, but I don't feel like there's enough there to help Watt. There were some banged up defensive linemen that kept coming in and out of the lineup, so I felt for them a little bit there. Like Hayward was kind of getting hurt and then going
Mhm,
back in, but they weren't very good in sacks this year. They were very good in takeaways. And the fact that means that's your strength. You're good at takeaways. And the fact that they were unable to get takeaways on the Ravens,
mhm.
that's a problem because they're just going to pound you with their running game, which means the chance of fumbling is a lot less than a chance of an interception. So You want to try to take away Derrick Henry. That gives you an opportunity, a chance. And they couldn't. He had 186 yards and 2 touchdowns. I've said it all year. There's no team in the NFL that can stop this team if Derrick Henry has numbers like that. No chance. No team in the NFL can stop the Ravens if they run Derrick Henry like that.
Mm-hmm.
If he has a 36-yard and no touchdown game, they can be beaten.
Mm-hmm.
But he gets a lot of his yardage in the second half, so you have to stay with it. And the only way to beat the Ravens, I think, is to get a nice little early lead where they have to abandon the run.
And oh, by the way, Lamar Jackson gets 81 yards on the ground as well.
Oh, he was unbelievable.
So, I mean, yeah, they're tough. They're really, really tough. Do you think this game says more about the Ravens and they're in playoff shape, which it looks like they are, or is it the Steelers and they have to kind of go back to the drawing board? I mean, they're talking about getting rid of Tomlin. And
yeah, I think they have to revamp.
People are really dissatisfied. I mean, Tomlin's 0-5 in his last 5 playoff games.
Well, I talked about this in our last podcast. I haven't seen the kind of calls for a head coach to get fired for Pittsburgh probably in my lifetime. Maybe there was once where they were calling for Cowher, but they don't call for Pittsburgh coaches.
Rob, he's had 14 straight winning seasons.
I know.
So.
However, I was thinking about this the other day. Think about how bad his competition is every year. Every year he needs to play twice, Cleveland and Cincinnati. That's 4 straight games of just trash. And then the Ravens aren't always good. They're always decent. Sometimes they jump up into the great category, but they've had plenty of down years and not playoff years. So that's a terrible division historically.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of those wins are trash,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to take everything away from the guy. I just think that it's not as impressive as it sounds like. If you're going to do that in the, NFC East back in the 80s or something, when you had the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Redskins, if you're going to do that in the AFC West or, some of the good divisions, I'll tip my hat to having that winning record and making the playoffs. But he gets to the playoffs and his teams get smoked because they don't really belong there because they have huge flaws. This team had a massive flaw on offense. So they didn't win the whole last month of football.
Would you agree that they don't have the answer at quarterback on that roster?
I don't think it's the quarterback's the problem.
Or do you think it's offensive line or what?
I think it's offensive line and lack of weapons for the quarterback.
And they can't run the ball.
Throwing to Pickens, and that's it. So they don't have weapons. And I think that quarterback needs weapons. He's not so good that he can overcome having none. They don't have good young weapons like the Bills who took all season, but these rookie wide receivers got better and better.
Yeah, but Rob, every time there was a critical play in that game, the offensive line for the Pittsburgh Steelers folded like a lawn chair. They really did.
No, I know.
On big plays. And
they don't have the weapons and they don't have the offensive line to execute a real offense. They need to retool the whole offense. I wouldn't start with quarterback. I'd start with go get a Joe Alt part 2. Go get a Penny Sewell. Go get both of them. Get the offensive line just not good enough. They can't run the ball. Najee Harris had a decent season at times this year, but when it all mattered, when it really came down, he was nowhere to be found.
So do you think the Steelers need to go get an offensive coach?
Yes.
Like a Ben McDonald?
I do. I think Tomlin's time has run its course in Pittsburgh. I think they've seen enough. Okay, cool. You beat on Cincinnati and Cleveland, so you make the playoffs, and then you lose first round in embarrassing fashion every year. That's not good enough. When you get to that level and you've been there a while, you got to do something.
Steelers fans don't want to keep going to the playoffs and losing first round every single year, 5 years in a row. They just don't want to do it.
They're cannon fodder first round. I would rather be bad sometimes and have a shot at the Super Bowl sometimes, even if I don't make it. I want my team to be competitive against the Lions, and against the Eagles and against the Chiefs. Give me a shot at the Chiefs. If this team plays the Chiefs, they get blown out,
So Ravens, what are you thinking about them right now, the kind of shape they're in to make a
push? I think they're the best. They're the best team in football, if they stick to the game plan.
Mm-hmm.
Because their defense is playing better. Their offense is steamrolling people, and they can run the ball down your throat. So,
This kid likely has become better than Andrews.
I don't know, not better, but he kind of has a different role. He's more of a long throw, like
He's a
long
receiving tight end. Yeah.
receiving tight end.
Mm-hmm.
Andrews is also a receiving tight end, but he does a lot shorter. He's more of a security blanket. He'll do a
Mm-hmm.
12-yard curl. He'll do
Mm-hmm.
a 4-yard slant, or he does shorter, getting first downs and getting touchdowns. Andrews is a touchdown machine.
Mm-hmm.
Likely is more likely, no pun intended, to run a 30-yard pattern.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. He
Andrews,
plays more like a receiver. He really does.
yeah, he is kind of like a big receiver.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that was a interesting game. I think Pittsburgh's got to retool, and I agree with you. Baltimore is looking really scary with their running game. This game was the most surprising to you, but not to me. I called Buffalo to win this game. I felt like they had the better coach and the better quarterback, and I thought they had the better offensive line. I didn't know how good the offensive line was until I watched this game. My goodness, they blew a great defense off the ball. You had Bo Nix comes in with 13 for 22 for 144 with a touchdown and a 68 QBR. And then Josh Allen has a huge game, very efficient, only threw it 26 times for 272, 2 touchdowns, and an 87 QBR. And Allen also had 46 yards on the ground. In terms of rushing, the Denver Broncos couldn't really get anything going except for Bo Nix. And James Cook had an absolute monster game and could have had an even bigger game if they hadn't taken their feet off the accelerator in the fourth quarter. In terms of receiving, the best player on the field for the Broncos was Courtland Sutton. Had a pretty nice game. I was happy to see Troy Franklin get in there and get a touchdown. He's the rookie who got drafted by Denver. He's starting to come along. And then Buffalo had a real nice game from Curtis Samuel, used to be with the Commanders and the Panthers. And then this kid who's been coming on as a rookie, Shakir, had a really nice game. And then both of their tight ends had big contributions, Kincaid and Dalton Knox. So what were your thoughts about this game?
I mean, you nailed it in a lot of the stats. They pretty much sing balance from Buffalo on offense. Lots of kudos there. They played really well on offense. But remember, this was 10-7 at halftime. And at the end of half, what happened? Lutz missed a 50-yard field goal for the Broncos. And, of course, they go in with that momentum I'm talking about, and the Bills come out and steamroll them in the second half. So I think when your team does something really good or really bad at halftime, it's starting to be a tell that is predictable.
Mm-hmm.
And,
you talk about that halftime momentum is really huge. You did talk about that.
It's weird. Yeah, it's weird. Halftime momentum is way more significant than I realized. And maybe it'll be disproven over future games, but I've noticed it lately, and I'm seeing it every game now. Like some of these blowout games are where something bad happened to the worst team right before half, and it got worse after halftime. Some of these comeback games, like Notre Dame being down, came back when they hit a field goal at the end of half. So right at the end of the first half.
What's amazing is Derrick Henry has made Lamar much better and the team much better. I mean, James Cook has done the exact same thing for Josh
Correct.
Allen. He's made Allen better and the team better.
Yeah, the quarterbacks, both Lamar and Allen, are getting a little too much credit because, honestly, their running backs are the reason why they're winning for the most part. Now, don't get me wrong, Allen and Lamar are playing so well this year, but they're being asked to do less. Mm-hmm. Lamar's running more. He's only throwing. He threw 21 times, 16 of 21. So he's asked, occasionally you're going to throw and you're going to be real accurate and you're going to pick them apart when it's time, but you're going to be running the ball. Derrick Henry's going to be running the ball down their throat and you're going to break their will. And it's a lot the same with Buffalo.
Rob, both these teams did the same thing in the second half. Yeah. You mentioned Derrick Henry gets better as the game goes on.
No question.
He's
not even the same running back in the second half. He's like a Hall of Famer in the second half.
The Ravens ran the ball 15 straight times in that game against the
Yeah.
Steelers, and we couldn't stop it. The
Couldn't stop.
Bills ran the ball 12 straight times with Cook and Allen, and the Broncos couldn't stop it. So it's like
Exactly
these
right.
teams realize what's working, and they just keep going at it. I mean, 15 straight times running the ball.
Yeah. I did.
That's
I
kind of
did not.
embarrassing.
I did think the Steelers would have trouble dealing with the running game of the Ravens. I did not think that the Broncos would have as much trouble as they did against the Bills running the ball, whether it's Allen or Cook. And you got to tip your hat. They just ran it down their throat.
And what about Ty Johnson? He had some nice contributions.
Johnson, yeah.
Really nice game.
Yeah. It was impressive.
He had a receiving touchdown too, which was controversial, but he had a big game. So,
but Curtis Samuel, Shakir, they gave some nice options. They both were in the 60s in yardage to give Allen some other options.
who do you
And so
think
it
is
just
playing
kept
better
that
right now?
defense off balance just enough.
Who's playing better right now, the Bills or the Ravens?
Ravens.
Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think so.
I think the Bills, but I think they're both playing really well because they can run the ball. They're playing better defense, and they have quarterbacks not making mistakes.
They're playing very similarly. You know,
the quarterbacks are literally – they are. You're right. The quarterbacks are playing with clean sheets.
Yeah.
You know, they're playing without mistakes.
And actually, the same thing has happened with Jalen Hurts.
Right. Well, let's talk about Jalen Hurts because the Eagles win 22-10, and what was amazing if you watch this game was Jalen Hurts was largely ineffective. He looked very, very rusty, having been off for 3 weeks. And Jordan Love, of course, has been banged up and hurt and did not play well through a couple really bad picks. I mean, horrific picks. They really hurt his team. But this really was kind of like the battle of the teams that couldn't get out of their own way. That's how it felt, with the Eagles, of course, having the better roster. Josh Jacobs for Green Bay had 81 yards rushing and a touchdown, so he had some success. Saquon Barkley had a huge game. Jaden Reed for Green Bay had an okay game. Josh Jacobs, Wicks had a couple catches. And then Devontae Smith and Goddard had a nice game for the Eagles. But this was not exactly the best game for either offense. So what were your thoughts about this one?
No. The better roster won. And Saquon Barkley was a dominant force. And the Eagles' D is superior. So, you know.
And it was at home. I mean,
the Eagles got 3 picks, one of them a fumble recovery, 4 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. It's pretty dominant.
Yeah, you can't win like that, you know.
And the Packers wide receivers kept getting hurt. So Jaden Reed went down. They had Christian Watson went down last week, and then they had another guy go down, and they had Dontavian Wicks got hurt, but he was the only guy left, so they kept him in there. It was a pitiful mash unit.
It was like a mash unit. You're right. Yeah. They had no one to throw out there.
So where is Jordan Love going with the ball? I mean,
That's right.
They couldn't run the ball at all. Josh Jacobs had a really nice touchdown, but other than that, you know, he had 40 yards receiving. That's pretty good. They kind of needed to throw to him at a certain point because they had nothing else. There was just nowhere. The walls were caving in by them.
This was a team that limped into the playoffs anyway. They did not play well down the stretch because of all the injuries, and they were even more injured in this game. So it was almost not really a fair fight. I mean, I would have liked to see Green Bay fully healthy. They probably could have done some damage.
Yeah, although that's certainly not the Lions' excuse. So you just play with what you got.
No, that's right. I mean, this game was sitting at 16-10 in the fourth quarter, so it's not like it was a blowout.
Right. No, it wasn't. It wasn't a blowout.
Do you think Jalen Hurts is going to improve in this next round? Can he shake off the cobwebs?
I think he was a little rusty. I think the Packers D has been pretty good this year, so they were kind of harassing, and they took the ball out of his hands, kind of, and they just were giving it to Saquon. And I think he'll gain some confidence from the win and move forward. I'm not a huge Hurts fan. I think he's wildly overpaid. I don't think he's one of those top tier guys.
Me too.
I think he got wildly overrated. From having one good season, but he's treated like a top tier quarterback, and I have not seen that from him this whole year, really.
Completely agree. Yeah.
But as
Well,
they've asked him to do less, they've gotten better.
I
So
thought this game was the least of the visually pleasing games of the weekend, and was not particularly competitive because the Green Bay Packers, they could barely field a team. That's how it felt to me. And Eagles didn't particularly play well, but they were the better roster, like you said.
Eagles defense played well,
Yeah.
and offense didn't make huge mistakes, and they just handed the ball off, ran the ball a lot, did some punts,
Mm-hmm.
made sure that Hurts didn't lose it for him.
Mm-hmm. True. They're asking him to do a lot less this year too, by the way. You notice a
Yeah.
trend with all these quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's why all these throwing numbers are down compared. In the past, Josh Allen's asked to throw the ball 46 times. This year, he's asked to throw 21.
Right.
They're winning.
Exactly.
They're much harder to stop.
That's right.
Same
That's
with
right.
Lamar. Same with Jalen Hurts. Same with a lot of these guys.
And a lot of these guys
They're
have more
told run the
weapons.
ball more. That's what they're
Right.
being told.
Right. The age of the running back is back. So it's really pretty exciting to watch.
Yeah.
So next game, of course, is incredibly exciting for us Washington fans. We grew up Washington Redskin fans, now Commanders. This game was just back and forth. Jaden Daniels, as a rookie, goes into Tampa, wins the game. He's got 268 with 2 touchdowns and an 80 QBR. Really solid for a rookie. Baker has a kind of a subpar game for him, 185 for 2 touchdowns. Still played pretty well. Didn't play particularly badly. Threw the ball really well to his top target, Mike Evans, who had a
He only threw the ball 18 times.
Right, I know.
So
Rushing, you had Jaden leading the way with Eckler and Robinson both having kind of subpar games rushing. Tampa, of course, Bucky Irving, who's in the running for Rookie of the Year, had a real nice game. Baker had a couple big first downs with his legs. On the receiving side, Duwami Brown from NC State had a big game, 89 yards and a touchdown. McLaurin, of course, always dominates, had a big touchdown. And then on the Tampa side, of course, Mike Evans, complete domination. He was up against his rival on the Washington side, who used to be with the Saints, and he just absolutely torched him the entire game. It was really, really effective. This game came down to a field goal. Essentially, Daniels was handed the ball with 4 minutes left in a 2020 game, and it's only the elite quarterbacks are going to get it done. And as the season has worn on, we Commanders fans have gotten more and more confidence that he's going to drive him down the field, get him in position around the 20-yard line. They're going to kick a field goal and win. And that's what the elite guys do. So what were your thoughts?
Jaden Daniels is a special player who is having his coming out party to the country, and they're starting to see that you put some more players around him, and they're going to be amazing. The defense is holding and playing better, and I think I was a little shocked at how little Baker Mayfield threw the ball. I know that you want Bucky Irving to carry the ball so that Baker doesn't have to be under a lot of pressure, but I was just stunned. I thought
Well,
they
do you know
put
why? Do you know why?
more.
I mean, Washington had the ball for 40
Well, yeah,
minutes. And
yeah.
Tampa had
I was
20.
about to say time of possession
Yeah.
35-26 to 24-34 of
And the
Tampa.
Bills had it 42 and Broncos had it 18. So, yeah, a lot
Yeah.
of these games, the blueprint was keep the ball away from the other team.
Hold
And
the ball.
Washington
Yeah,
clearly did not want the ball to go into Baker's hands, and it made sense.
that's right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And also interesting, Washington went for it 5 times on 4th down. They made it
Mhm.
3 out of the 5.
Mhm.
And Tampa was 0 for 0. They never went for it on 4th. So that's an interesting
They were
stat.
joking that the game between Washington and Detroit is going to be like a Madden game,
Yeah.
like video game, because in Madden you don't go for field goals, you just go for it on 4th down every time, no matter what.
Yeah, it's
And
crazy.
so that's what it's going to be. Both teams are going to be going for it on 4th down every time. So interesting, really, really exciting game. This is the kind of game I was expecting out of the 6 matchups to be out like 5 out of the 6, and it just didn't materialize except for this one.
Yeah, it was a very good game.
Yeah, incredibly impressive for a rookie to go on the road and win the playoffs, like we said.
Yep.
A lot of fun. This one was interesting and surprising. You and I both picked the Vikings in this game narrowly. We both thought it'd be a close game. On the road, again, they're playing in a dome just like the Rams do. So I thought the elements wouldn't be an issue. And I felt like the Vikings had the better roster, although I did know that Stafford and their coach were the better coach and quarterback combination.
Yeah,
And,
I was worried about my pick because of Stafford. That's
and
really
then what happened was the LA Rams defense was so much better than I thought they were, and they
yeah.
clearly have really hit on their last couple of drafts.
That's the best young defense in football.
Yeah, they were really impressive. So Darnold ends up with 245, a touchdown, and a pick. But those numbers are actually better than it really was. I mean, he was largely ineffective with a 13 QBR,
9
uh,
sacks.
9 sacks, and
Crazy.
he looked very deer in the headlights. He looked very confused. He kept kind of rolling into sacks.
Yeah.
He was making when he did make a throw to a receiver, it was often really high, and the guy was trying to stretch to get it and couldn't get it, and things like that. It just wasn't clicking overall. Whereas
Ra-
Stafford had a really nice, efficient game, as you can see.
Rams defense scored a touchdown, got 9 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, and a pick. I mean, they were a nemesis.
The Lions blitzed Darnold 62% of the time. Los Angeles blitzed him 66% of the time. So they
Yep.
clearly watched the tape.
Yep. Shula did
Minnesota
a nice job getting his team ready.
rushing Minnesota. One of the reasons they've been collapsing at the end of the year is their running game's kind of dried up. And that's been a huge thing. You can't get play action going without a running game. Kyron Williams had a nice game rushing for the Rams. Receiving, Hawkinson had a real nice touchdown for Minnesota
Yeah.
right towards the end of the game, but it really was almost didn't matter. That was in the third quarter, I believe.
That was a beautiful play.
Was really
In
nice
fact,
play.
even that was a bad throw by Darnold.
Right.
Hawkinson was running across the middle, and the ball was behind him, and he caught it on his hip with one hand, and then moved it over and scampered in for a touchdown. It was an incredible play by Hawkinson.
It
Really
was
nice tight end play.
similar to that throw that Jalen Hurts made that was a real bad throw that Goddard corralled and then
Yeah.
squirted down the sideline for a touchdown. Very
Yeah,
similar.
these tight ends really bail out their quarterbacks sometimes.
They do. Justin Jefferson with 5 catches for 58, but he had a subpar game for him. A lot of the receivers were getting really frustrated. They couldn't get the ball. And then on the LA side, Higbee, Nakua, Cooper Kupp had a really nice 29-yard catch. Really liked that play. What are your thoughts about this game, 27-9, kind of a domination by the Rams?
Defense scored a touchdown. That's your 7 points right there. Red zone, they were Minnesota was 0 for 1, and LA was 2 for 4. So LA was getting some touchdowns in the red zone. They got a touchdown from their defense. Their defense was just swarming Darnold. He had a 13.6 QBR. It was a bad night for him, but it was a bad night for that offensive line and all the protection schemes that O'Connell should have been able to draw up better. I mean, he got whipped.
Right.
So
It's true.
yeah.
Yeah, I was incredibly surprised with this game too. The two most surprising to me were this one because the defense for LA was so good and the Texans win was so dominating. Those two games were very surprising to me.
I felt like this was going to be a really good, close game, this one right here, and it wasn't. So that to me was the surprise. Not so much that LA won. I was really nervous. I felt like, Stafford might get this done. Like that, I don't want to root against Stafford at any point. I like him as a quarterback. I think he's really underrated. He's an elite quarterback.
He is.
And
He is.
Darnold's not an elite quarterback. He's been playing
Yeah.
on a great team all year.
Right.
Whose defense really hands them good field position and does a whole bunch of good things. But
They got to go back and really evaluate Sam Darnold before they decide if they're going to pay him.
yeah,
Because you may, even if you franchise him, that's $41 million, and he's making like $12 million this year. So you got to
I heard
figure
them
out.
saying that there's a lot of talk that he needs to be paid like Baker. I think Baker
Right.
makes like 31 or 32.
31,
Yeah.
yep.
They said that that's going to be the contract that they're going to offer him, something along those lines. And you know what? I think he's probably worth that.
Maybe.
He's probably
Maybe.
worth that.
They have a big problem with their offensive line if it's going to be Darnold. He needs special protection.
Yeah, they're going to have to go get linemen.
He's like Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is terrible when there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah,
But he's fortunate because the Eagles have a really good offensive line. So
Go look at Jefferson's numbers, how much they plummet when the quarterback's getting blitzed a lot.
that's right. Darnold can literally be effective if he had the
Time.
Eagles offensive line, but the Vikings are
Yep.
going to have to retool. Yeah. So looking at the bracket as it is now with those games in the books, you have Washington going to Detroit. You have LA going to the Eagles. Those are the last two games in the NFC. You have the Texans visiting the Chiefs, and you have the Ravens going to Buffalo in the snow. So which of these matchups are you most looking forward to?
Ravens, Bills, I think.
Yeah.
And
I think,
Washington, Detroit.
yeah, I agree. I think Ravens Bills, for a lot of people, feel like that almost should be the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Or at
Yeah.
least close, or the AFC Championship game, like it just feels like a really huge game. Like whoever wins that game may be going to the Super Bowl. That's
I
what it
like
feels
for the winner of that to play the Lions.
I think that's,
Yeah.
that's the Super Bowl everybody wants.
That's the one everyone wants. Yeah.
So does Washington have a chance?
Yes. Because
Right now,
Detroit is hurt.
Detroit is a 10-point favorite.
Yeah. I'm not picking Washington. I'm just saying they have a chance.
Eagles
If they
are
can keep it close. And then if Campbell goes for it on fourth when he shouldn't sometime, and they get handed a gift on their own 10 or something.
So Lions 10-point favorite. I would take the points. I would take Washington in the 10 points.
Probably.
I think the Lions will win, but that seems like a lot of points.
Seems like a lot of points when you have 9 of your 11 starters out on defense.
Yeah.
Because
And then Eagles are favored by 6 over the Rams. That seemed a little high for me too.
I think that's about right. I think they're going to
The
win.
Rams will keep it closer than that. I really do.
I think they'll win by a touchdown or more.
Maybe. Kansas City's a 4-point favorite over the Texans.
Should be a good game.
Yeah,
the Texans D might be able to hold up for a while.
I think they're going to struggle in 10-degree weather. I think they're so used to playing in the dome.
Yeah.
I think Texans would have a better shot if this game was in Houston, but 10-degree weather in Kansas City, and Kansas City loves that kind of weather. So,
yeah,
I like Kansas City to win by about a touchdown. And then Baltimore and Buffalo in the 10-degree snowy weather of Buffalo. What do you think about that one?
I think the Ravens are the better team, but it's kind of a coin flip because this is the point in the playoffs when John Harbaugh abandons the run. So
right.
if they run Henry a lot, they're going to win the game.
Mm-hmm. I actually agree with that.
I know that's an oversimplification, but I think that
really.
It leads to all the positives that come from keeping your defense off the field.
No, I agree with that generally, but I will say that James Cook can balance some of that out because he's going to have a big game too, I think. So we'll see. I think this is going to be an epic game. I think it may be even pretty high scoring, like 34-31. And I've picked the Bills, so I think they get it done like 34-31 or 31-28, something like that.
Both these teams have okay defenses that have been playing great in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they both have excellent offenses with balance. When they're balanced, both teams' offenses are virtually unstoppable.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
true.
if one of those teams gets unbalanced or one of their defenses gets exposed, that's going to pivot to the winner of the game and possibly blowout. But I think that you're looking at a heavyweight matchup, and this could be one for all times. Who knows?
All right, so here's the playoff schedule. What it looks like: Saturday at 4:30 is Texans, Kansas City. Saturday at 8 is Washington at Lions. Sunday at 3 is LA at Eagles, and then the final game is the one everyone wants to watch. That's the Ravens and Bills. So that's what the schedule looks like. So I'm excited about this schedule. It'll be a lot of fun. I'll be with you for a lot of that, so we'll have to figure out a way to fit that in among all the birthday celebrations.
We can bleed my phone down to 0 power. Watching
we
it
gotta watch it somehow.
Boys are celebrating their 9th birthday.
So this was interesting. The Sports Illustrated power rankings at this stage with 8 teams left, they had the Bills as the top team, Kansas City second, Baltimore third, then the Eagles fourth, Lions fifth. And it actually explained in the article that they would have the Lions a lot higher, except that they look at the Lions as kind of like a mash unit right now.
Oh yeah, I've never seen a team that go this far with that many injuries.
So what are your thoughts about this power rankings?
I think the Lions are the best team in football when they have their players. I think they're beatable now that they don't have their players. I think the Ravens look like the best team that I've seen in the playoffs so far. I think those two teams should be at the top. So otherwise, I like the Bills up there. I think that their balanced offense and the way their offensive line played, I think they can do it again. That's why I think they've shown me a lot. I think the Chiefs are a little vulnerable. Their offense is mediocre.
I think the two best offensive lines in football right now, as of today, are the Bills and the Eagles. And
Yeah,
I think that goes a long way because those quarterbacks benefit tremendously when their lines play like that.
no question.
Yeah.
And I think the Chiefs need to be a little lower than that. I think a lot of reputation and coach aura keep them higher than they probably should be.
So I'd have the Bills, I'd have the Lions, and I'd have the Ravens would be my top three. I'd have Lions at 2 just
Do
because of
you
the
really? Yeah. Do you really want to play the Lions? They're blowing everyone
no.
out. Like it's
No, I
not.
don't.
They're blowing
Having
out good teams.
having them at 5 is ridiculous. They're
Yeah.
definitely one of the top 2 for sure. So this is a exercise we did a couple episodes ago, Robbie, and I thought we would pick it up again. We have some new people to think about here. This is our subscriber challenge. We want all of you guys to drop a comment down below and tell us which of these seat arrangements you would sit in if you had to fly to Europe. Where would you be sitting? So give us like your top one and maybe your second best one here. So drop that in the comments down below, and we'll read some of those in our mailbag next week. So Robbie, tell me your top 2. Who are you going to try to sit next to? You got Ben McDonald and Mr. Dan from the Lions in row 6. You got Shador and his dad in 5. You got the Harbaugh brothers. You
I
got
think
Kelsey and his future wife.
is that Mina Kimes with Dan Orlovsky?
Yes. Yep.
Hmm.
They're one of the NFL broadcast
I
crews.
think I'm sitting between the Harbaugh brothers, or I'm sitting with Travis and Taylor.
Are you? And why?
I think it would just be interesting to hear what they have to talk about. Do they stay more on sports, or do they stay more on music, or is it what it's like being a billionaire, or I don't know. And then the Harbaugh brothers are hilarious. They have an incredible rivalry, but they really love each other. And when John Harbaugh beat Jim Harbaugh, it took them a while to recover from that. I think they're very competitive, and I think they would be hilarious.
I think 100% I would say 7 is my number 1 as well. I
Yeah,
would love to sit between those 2 brothers. Wouldn't it be cool if the 2 of us could sit between them?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But my number 2 might surprise you. I'd like to sit next to Lou Holtz. I think he is just hilarious. He's
Well, it's
hysterical.
funny you
You ever
say that
seen him
because
talk? I
I
really
was
love
thinking
Lou
about
Holtz.
sitting in 6 because you could get to pick the brains of the Lions coaches, and you
Ben
could talk to
McDonald, yeah.
Lou across the. I was actually thinking about that. You could talk to Lou Holtz across the
Across
aisle.
the aisle. Yeah, that's true.
So that might be the best because you get 3 good ones.
That's true.
That's why I looked at 6. I almost said that, but I was like, I
And
don't
then
know enough
if I
about the
did
offensive
sit in
coordinator
4,
for the Lions.
if I was forced to sit in 4, I'd have Dan Orlovsky move over and I'd sit in the middle because I'd want to talk to her, not him.
You know what I wish you had done is the Kelsey brothers. If you had
Yeah.
Travis on one side and Jason on the other, that would be fun.
No, we had that in our last one.
I know, but
Yeah.
I'm saying that would be better than Travis and Taylor. But
Yeah.
not that I'm anti-Taylor. I'm just saying
All right.
those
So
2 can really
so
talk.
you're
It's fun.
7 and 8. You're 7 and 8, and I'm 7 and 2. So
Mhm. And my
all
third
right.
pick would be 6 because I could talk to Ben McDonald um, and lean across and talk to Lou Holtz across the aisle. That'd be
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
And occasionally I'd look behind me and say hey to Deion.
And actually, Nick Saban would be fun to talk to too. So
Yeah.
well, let's talk about the coaching carousel in the NFL. We have the Patriots finally decided on their guy. They're bringing a guy home who was a All-Pro and going to be a Hall of Fame player for them, Mike Vrabel.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about him joining the Patriots? And taking over the new era post Belichick?
Well, I think it's probably a good idea. I mean, he's going to bring discipline. That's what a rookie quarterback desperately needs. He's going to have a little bit of fear in the locker room for acting up. He runs the Patriot way, and a lot of people are saying the Patriot way is dead. I just think that the people who run the Patriot way have stepped away from football for a little bit, but he's back in. So I think his defense is going to get dramatically better, even though they had a pretty good season, the Patriots defense. And I think offensively, the sky's the limit for Drake May. They need a lot of offensive weapons. They need players, which I think they're going to get a decent draft, hopefully. And so I was never a huge fan of having Belichick as the general manager. I think he's a great coach, not a great general manager. And I think that the Patriots can certainly do better with their choices and build up that offense.
I think Vrabel's going to be a really good coach. He already is a good coach. I think he did a nice job in Tennessee. He
Yeah,
even
he
took
did.
them to the playoffs.
Yep.
I think, this is the kind of boy coming home situation. I think he's going to gain a lot of respect in that locker room. The key is, though, you and I talked about this earlier today off air, and that is he needs a really good offensive coordinator
Yep.
because he is a defensive coach. So if he brings in a really solid OC, I could see them turning around pretty quickly within a year or two, kind of like a Washington Commanders situation. I think Drake May is going to be pretty good.
I could see them turning into a Ravens kind of situation where their defense is always good and they run the ball well and they kind of control the clock and have long drives.
He needs to go get a really solid back. They're probably going to end
Yeah.
up drafting Travis Hunter. That's what everyone's saying.
Yeah.
So he's going to have Travis Hunter to work
I
with.
think they should get Genty.
Then they might go get Sampson in the second round from Tennessee.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And then they're on their way. They're going to play the kind of ball that Vrabel wants to play. So, think about it. He had Derrick Henry. He had A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think this is a good hire. I think this is a good direction for the Patriots. Second guy is Mike McCarthy is out as Cowboys head coach. Essentially, apparently they wanted to work together, but couldn't agree on a contract. He wanted 5 years, and Jerry wanted 3 years, and they were a little bit off on the number. And so after apparently 2 weeks of really frustrating negotiations, McCarthy's agent called Jerry and said he's out. So it was kind of a weird situation. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're saying that he fired him, but he really didn't. It was a negotiation that fell apart, and McCarthy's contract ended. So,
but do you think that when you look at Jerry, do you think that the last 4 contract negotiations, he's really kind of botched it? I mean, he let the whole contract situation with Dak run out all the way to the very end, and then ended up paying him anyway. He hasn't paid Micah yet. He had the Zeke contract some years ago that he had to suck a lot of the money up there at the end.
He's a terrible general manager.
He had this Mike McCarthy contract that it's just embarrassing. It just seems like everything he touches, he botches.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's not a good football guy. He's a really good businessman. So it's weird.
Yeah. Well, I think Mike McCarthy's probably relieved at this point because I think a firing was coming anyway at some point. So
yeah,
he might be relieved to be out of that situation.
He was going to get fired middle of next season. So
next one is, should Steelers fire Mike Tomlin after latest one-and-done playoff exit? He's 0-5 in his last playoff appearances. Or should they do something that, a couple of the podcasters have been recommending, and that is to trade him. Apparently he's got some trade value.
I'd trade him if I could. I wouldn't fire him. But, yeah, you got to get rid of him because he's a defensive coach. They are a defensive football team, and their defense wasn't that great down the stretch when it mattered.
And their offense is broken.
The offense is broken, and a defensive coach can't fix a bad offense. So they need somebody who's an offensive coach to fix that offense.
Mm-hmm.
And they've survived a lot of he's had a couple good seasons where he went way past getting blown out in the first round, but he's not the guy to fix this offense.
They talk about there's something called NFL purgatory, and that's where every single year you're 8-9 or 9-8.
Yep.
And then you end up picking in the second half of the first round, the second half of the second round, and you never can get those, really make a difference picks.
Yeah.
So you're always going to be 9-8 or 8-9 every year. It's called NFL purgatory, and that's where the Steelers have been for about 10 years.
Yeah.
So you either need to get
That's why
really
their
bad
people
for
are
a while.
pulling their hair out so much, because they never really matter. They're always sneaking into the playoffs and getting drubbed, and then you just got to be excited that your
And
defense is pretty good.
and then they get the 18th pick in every round.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
Yeah.
they never can really improve themselves.
There's
So
never a splash pick.
that's right. That's right. I would try to trade him. I think you probably could trade him at this point. You should probably do it right now, though, when you have 6
Yeah.
openings. So let's talk about those 6 openings. You got the Bears, the Jets, the Cowboys, the Raiders, the Jaguars, and the Saints. You got 6 openings right now. What are your thoughts about these 6 jobs? What do you think is the best one on the board?
I'd probably say the Saints or the Raiders.
Why the Saints or Raiders?
I think their organizations aren't bad. The front offices aren't bad. The others are dumpster fires.
It's just I think they're all 6 bad. Can I
They
say
are. No,
that?
they
I mean,
are. I'm just saying, if the question is which one's the best of the bad
like
ones.
Harbaugh jumped from Michigan for a reason because he saw a team that had some pieces already and had a quarterback. You know what I mean? Like you could be good right away. You look at these teams and they either don't have a quarterback or they have a bad owner or they have a bad organization. I say maybe the Raiders. If I were
Yeah,
picking
because
and I was a coach,
they have pieces in place. They just need a
yeah,
quarterback.
yeah, they need a quarterback. Yeah, I think the Raiders would be the best job for me.
I don't know. They still have a lot of needs.
Saints maybe, but I don't know. That
I think the
organization
Saints are the best one on the board,
maybe.
uh, and it's not great, but they're the best of these 6.
And Cowboys, you just couldn't pay me enough to go work with Jerry. I'm
No,
sorry. It's
he's
not
a
just
good
my hate for the
he's a
Cowboys. It's
good owner and a terrible football guy.
you just go there and you know you're going to be fired in 3 years. So,
He's just gonna meddle in everything,
yeah. Well, some interesting news. The Chicago Bears are interviewing Mike McCarthy actually tomorrow.
Mhm.
Ben Johnson is actually on their board as well, but they have to wait a couple weeks for him because likely the Lions are going on a couple more weeks. So the question is, should they strike and take McCarthy now when he's kind of the safe pick, or should they wait for the next guy who's going to be the next big coordinator, makes a big splash, and that's Ben Johnson. So what are your thoughts?
So it's college and pro is so different. You don't have to hurry to get your pro guy in place. You have to have good timing, but college, it's all about recruiting. And the recruiting trail is starting to heat up now. Like, you don't want to wait and lose out on players. You've got to warm up the jet and start sending your coaching teams out to go talk to players and watch players in college. In pros, the players come to you. So there's no hurry to get. You can certainly wait a couple weeks to get your coach in place.
Mhm.
It is a lot of hiring that happens in the front office, the secretaries, the equipment people, the strength trainers, all those people, the people who run your facilities. But that can be done over the course of the spring. You don't have to have all that in place. And you want to get the right guy. You don't want to just pick the quickest,
Mhm.
easiest
Right.
guy.
I would wait for Ben Johnson. That's just me personally.
Yeah.
I rate for the kind of young coordinator, up and coming kind of guy. That's what I want, especially for an organization that's a dumpster fire that really needs some kind of
Yeah.
juice. What do you think about this tagline? Deion Sanders intrigued in the Raiders job, but Las Vegas has zero interest.
I mean, Tom Brady's part of the Vegas group. I think Tom Brady feels like he would be just a big media distraction.
And by the way, Brady is running the search, so he's
Yeah.
going to be a huge
Yeah.
part of it.
I think Brady's not interested in Deion, but I might be wrong about that. That might play out differently. It could be
The
about money. It could be about having to have Shadur. I don't know.
I was watching Fox Sports 1 right before this podcast, and a headline came across that said Sanders is now considering Tennessee Titans to be his spot. They might try to make some kind of move there where he would take over the Tennessee job, and then Tennessee would draft Shadur. So it'd be like a
I'll be
package
honest
deal.
with you. I would be fine with Deion being my coach. I'd be fine with Shador being my quarterback. I would not be fine with Shador being coached by Deion and assuming that he can coach him hard enough to improve in the NFL.
Mhm.
I don't want a father-son combo.
So you think it'd be better for Shador even that he goes somewhere without his dad?
It would be better for Shador to go
Mhm.
somewhere where he can get coached hard by like a McVay or somebody like that.
McVay or
Um,
O'Donnell or
yeah,
yeah.
one of those young minds.
Mhm.
Washington,
Cliff Kingsbury. Yeah.
Kingsbury, if he left Washington, just I would say Shador could do well there. I would be concerned about Shador playing for his father.
I agree. The other big headline that came out today was that Shador is not going to be allowed to be drafted by the Browns or the Jets, which I thought was kind of an arrogant statement
Yeah.
by Deion's.
I stay away
Thing.
from that kind of stuff, that kind of
Yeah.
player and coach,
Yeah, I don't like
father,
that either.
son. I don't like it.
I don't like it either. Let's look at some of the football memes. Always tie your shoes. This was that
Yeah.
Ty Johnson catch that was very controversial. You thought maybe it wasn't a catch. I thought it
I thought
was.
it bounced on the ground, but I wasn't screaming at the TV or anything. I just thought I thought it was a missed call
Yeah, it was
because
very close. But
the ball moved when it hit the ground.
whether it was a catch or not, it was an incredible play. I mean,
It
by this
was.
guy
It
to
was.
keep and he knew his feet were right there to really keep him up like that
I
was
know.
pretty
It
cool.
was. It was. It was pretty cool to watch that.
Very cool to watch. In NFL history, there have been 3 instances of a team having 0 turnovers and 0 punts in a game behind a rookie starting quarterback. All 3 were by Jaden Daniels this year. Week 2, 3, and this past weekend. So, thoughts about what kind of numbers this kid is putting up as a rookie?
He's a special player. His decision making, his athletic ability, his juice, his excitement. It was so wild to watch him when the Commanders hit that kick. Which, by the way, the kicker. There's been a lot of talk about Gonzalez,
Yeah,
the kicker, about how nervous he was.
right.
And honestly, it wasn't nerve so much. It's come out more information has come out. It's actually OCD.
OCD. Yeah,
He
I
was
have a
taking his
meme
socks
here.
off. Oh,
I have
okay.
a meme here coming up about it, about his OCD. Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say is Jaden Daniels' reaction when the kick happened, he was cool as ice. He didn't smile. He just looked up and just kind of nodded. Like he wasn't going crazy. Like he's got juice, but he's not this crazy maniac like Baker Mayfield,
And
you know.
it's funny you say that, Rob, because he is so cool in his veins. He's so
Yeah.
ice in his veins that it helps him when he gets into like a 4th and 1 situation in a playoff game. Like he's just not
Yeah.
nervous. I've never seen anything like it.
He's not nervous.
23-year-old kid,
He's not overly excited. He's just
he's
very
just calm. He's just calm.
methodical,
Yeah,
calm. Yeah. But he
yeah.
has excitement in his feet. His feet do his excitement dancing for him. He's
Like
running
you
like
hear
crazy.
Zach Ertz is 34 years old now. You hear him talk about this 23-year-old kid, and he's just like, I've never seen anything like this kid and the leadership qualities he's got at such a young
Yeah.
age. It's like the locker room just loves him.
They love him.
So it's really cool. This one's pretty interesting. This is the valuation of the top 5 programs in college football if they were pro teams. Ohio State being the top with 1.32 billion, and they had 280 million in revenue in 2023, most of any school.
Wow.
Texas just below them, A&M, Michigan, and Alabama. Those are your 5 most valuable athletic programs in the country. Any surprises there?
Not really. A&M's big dollar.
I was
The rest
surprised
of
by A&M. That was the one I was the most
Not
surprised by.
me. They're huge dollar. When they went and got Jimbo Fisher, they paid him some ridiculous amount, and then they paid him a huge amount to go away. They've got money coming out of their ears. That A&M's a really wealthy
Can you believe the money some
alumni
of these
base.
teams have? It's just
Yeah,
astounding. Texas,
yeah.
really amazing to watch.
Mm.
So this one was interesting. Call Girl claimed and did an interview that she was partying on a yacht with Penn State quarterback Drew Aller just hours before the Orange Bowl in Miami. And there was a picture of him on a boat with this beautiful chick right before the Orange Bowl. So do you think that had anything to do with his performance?
Who knows when that picture was taken? I don't subscribe to any of this kind of stuff.
Do you think she was lying?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no basis for her word and a picture of him.
If he was
On a
doing it,
boat.
clearly was very inappropriate before the biggest game of his life. If this is just a rumor, then he should like sue her pants off for slander. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it was all
He
over
might
the
have been
thing.
out on a boat, but
Yeah.
who knows what the circumstances were,
Right. Right. I hope this isn't true because I like the kid. He didn't play well though. It was kind of curious how poorly he did play. This was interesting. Steve
Yeah.
Sarkisian sneaking the world's worst toss play into his red zone playbook. What are your thoughts about that one?
I've heard the defenses of this play, and I understand them. I just can't defend going sideways against a team that's faster than you are ever. Whether it's 3rd and 1, whether it's 2nd and 1, whether it's goal line, you go forward. Even if they stop you, they're going to stop you with no gain. And then you get to try again.
It was a total head scratcher.
These guys lost 7 yards
Right.
trying to outrun faster linebackers and safeties. And just
If you can't score
Caleb
3
Downs is coming flying through that hole. Like, he's the best defensive player in the country. You're not going to outrun him.
if you're 2nd and 1 on the goal line and you're Texas and you're Texas fans, and I watch Arch Manning and my team do lots of little tricks to find a way to get it 1 yard and 3 downs, and I don't get it, you just tip your cap to Ohio State and say,
Yeah.
okay. But if you do this kind of stuff, it's maddening for Texas fans to not just go north and south. Go north and south.
I go north and south first run. I think second one, I actually take a shot with my tight end.
Yeah, maybe do
3rd down,
jump
I take
ball.
a shot up the middle, and 4th down, I take a shot up the middle, and I just make them stop me. And I put in heavy jumbo linemen, and
Yep.
and I
And
just try to
tush push. I do tush
run
push.
right at them. You need 3 feet.
Because tush push, you've got an extra blocker because Arch Manning is your running back. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
You need 3 feet. There's a chance in those 3 opportunities, other than the time you throw to your tight end, that you can hit a crease that gives you 3 feet.
They'll be talking about this one for a long time, about that play. This is what you were talking about. The Zane
poor
Gonzalez
guy,
said
man.
he's long struggled with OCD
Yeah.
since his freshman year at Arizona State, and he's been very public about it. He's actually been on some podcasts talking about it and
Yeah.
a lot of cool stuff. And so he has this tick of fixing his hair. It's how he calms himself down. I will say the TV was really trained on him doing this, and it was really painful to watch. It was really sad and painful
I
to watch.
felt
I don't know how
sorry
you
for
felt
him.
about it.
I really did.
Yeah, like he can't stop doing it.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what you do about it. He hit the kick though. So, but
Well, he did say that the OCD allows him to be meticulous, which allows him to hit these kind of kicks.
do you think though that they should be focusing on him doing this because they're trying to bring attention to it to help
I
people?
think that's okay
Or
to
do you
draw attention to it.
Or do you think that they should just leave the kid alone and not keep with the
Well, I don't
TV
know
on?
much about OCD, but I'm sure that there's an anxiety element to it. You could feel anxiety exuding off this man as he was struggling to get in the right mind space. And I was so happy when he finally put that helmet on. He was doing this thing where he took his helmet, he started to put it on, he'd stop, and he'd put it in one hand, and he
And
would
he'd take his shoes off and he'd fix his socks and he'd put his shoes
fix
back
his
on.
hair, and then he'd go to put his helmet back on. He'd get it almost on, and then he'd take it back off, and he'd fix his hair again. Once the helmet went on, I was like, yes, let's go. Like, I don't know. I was rooting for him. I
I
felt a
think
little
everybody
sorry
was
for
rooting
him.
for him.
I didn't really understand why he was so nervous, but it wasn't nerves so much. It was more an OCD tick that he can't control, really. But he said that that's what helps him focus is all that ritualistic repetition.
I think
So
we all need to learn a little more
let's
about
go.
OCD, but I will
Yeah.
say that I kind of in the future I kind of prefer them to keep the camera off. I'm just let him be. So this last one here, 15 teams have won at least 10 games in 2024, the most in NFL history. And what it shows for a lot of the people writing this article was that the old days of parity actually are gone, and now you've got kind of a top end of the NFL and a really bad bottom end of the NFL. What are your thoughts about this? Why
Yeah.
do we have so many teams getting
It's
10
funny. I
wins?
was thinking about this recently. I think because you have the haves and the have-nots at quarterback and coach
Mhm.
and defense. So if you have those three elements together, because all these teams have pretty good defense.
Mhm.
So the bad defenses are at the bottom. They're nowhere to be found. The
Mhm.
Panthers had the worst defense in the NFL. They were so far removed from the playoffs, you can't even believe it. So what I was thinking about was, as parity slips a little in the NFL, it's gaining parity in college.
Mhm.
And it's because the NIL is forcing better
That's
players
right.
to, instead of being third and fourth string at Alabama, they're going and they're starting at, at
Mhm.
whatever, Tennessee. So parity is growing in college with the 12-team playoff and more teams having better players than all of them going to the small number of players. And even though
Mhm.
this year all the blue bloods are left, it's just the two blue bloods. I do think that more teams had an opportunity to try and take their shot.
Mhm.
And I think in the future, it'll get more and more parity as you spread the talent around.
Because if you look at our preseason episode, which, by the way, if you guys haven't watched that, I think it's pretty good to look back at what we were saying. We were predicting it to be a lot of 9-8 and 8-9 and 7-10 and 10-7 teams,
Yeah.
and it just didn't really come to pass this year. It really was the haves and the have-nots. It was very
Yep.
surprising. There were a lot of 3-win, 4-win, 5-win teams this year, a lot more than usual. So
Well,
I don't know.
there were teams like the Bengals who had an outstanding offense, and their defense was dreadful. So you have good coach, good quarterback, terrible defense. You're not making the playoffs.
Right? They went 8-9
Yeah,
with the best quarterback in football.
right. So
Yeah,
there were a lot of teams kind of like that where they were
yeah.
missing something.
But there were also a lot of trash teams with 3 and 4 wins. I mean, a lot.
Yeah.
So, and those teams, a lot of times, those teams are out of it by October. So, all right, Robbie, I'm going to hand the mailbag and news segment over to you.
Okay. So there's a couple of things that were interesting. Um, the discussion about Jaden Daniels being the best rookie of all time at
Mhm.
quarterback. I found it pretty interesting. Keep your eyes out for that kind of discussion. A.J. Brown reading on the sidelines. He was reading Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy. This was a big hullabaloo. They were criticizing him for reading as if he was sort of being just leisurely. A
Mhm.
lot more information came out. And how do you feel about that?
I found it very odd that he was doing that. Apparently, his teammates are accepting of it because apparently he reads it every single game and has been doing it
Yeah.
for 2 years. It's kind of like his crutch. It's almost like his version of that kicker's nervous tick. Apparently, it calms him down. It gets him in the right mindset. So
Yes.
once I found that out, that the coaches and the players all accept it and that it's part of his deal and they all know it and accept it, then I was okay with it. What's interesting is Amazon has seen a surge in book sales of that book.
Yeah.
It's gone up 5,400% this week. 5,400% in sales. So there's a lot of people wanted to go see what it was about, and everybody started ordering it. So I have to say, I'm kind of curious too what it says about
Well,
leadership.
it's a really inspirational book about summoning up your excellence and how to overcome mental weakness and stuff like that. So I'm fine with him reading it on there because it's all part of him staying in the game mentally. And apparently he mostly read it when he would drop a ball or, do something that he needed to get his mind back on track for. So I'm fine with that. I saw no
I'm okay
problem
with
with
it,
one.
but I generally want my players to be into the game and be supporting the defense and be like watching every play. And
Yeah.
generally that's what you want. But if this particular player and everybody knows it needs this kind of crutch to kind of get them through a game, then okay. But
I don't see much of a difference between reading an iPad that's showing you different plays
true.
uh, where you're not watching the defense and reading something that makes you mentally get that catch better next time. To me, it is part of the game. You're taking the game seriously. You're trying to be the best you can out there. And so I'm fine with it. So anyway, that's just an interesting, scandalous thing that came out. And then I think once people realized that this was a book about excellence and dealing with pressure and overcoming and all that stuff, I think people understood.
I agree.
Another piece of information, Quinn Ewer's agent said that he is declared for the NFL draft. So
I did see that.
the Manning era has begun in Texas.
I did see that. Yeah. Apparently he made the decision on Monday night with his agent and decided to not take the college NIL deal and to go ahead and declare. And they're pegging him for a 3rd-round pick. So I found that interesting.
That is interesting. Well, he's made some money already. So
I think what he needs, because he is not a complete player, not even close, I think what he needs is he needs a pretty good team to take him as a flyer in the 3rd or 4th round and develop him for the future. Maybe like the Rams or somebody who've got a good, solid quarterback ahead of him he can learn from, because he's, I felt all year that he was holding Texas back, one of the best rosters.
Yeah, I agree. So some more Manning information. First of all, the Manning era has begun. Did you know who they play, who Texas plays to open the season?
No.
Ohio State.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that'd be a really nice start to the season.
You know what's going to happen when they get down the goal line at the 1-yard line? They're going to be showing the replay of that play over and over.
I know. A couple other things that were cool. Arch stayed afterward and congratulated his guys on a good season and went around and shook everybody on his team's hands, saying we tried, we played hard.
Showed a lot of leadership.
He showed leadership. And I think it's pretty clear that I think Ewer saw that and said, man, that kid's got it. Like I need to move on out of here before I keep getting compared to him. I'm going to fall short. So.
And do you think also because he saw his roommate make the big play for Ohio State and his roommate's going into the draft too, you think that was part of it?
No, I don't think that had anything to do with it. I think Manning breathing down his throat and the way that game kind of went and sort of his season kind of floundered a little on an amazing roster. I think he knows I could hurt my stock worse and end up really in bad shape, but I don't know exactly. Another interesting Manning fact, Will Howard and Riley Leonard were roommates at the Manning Passing Academy last summer.
Huh.
So that's pretty cool. Will Howard and Riley Leonard.
Wow.
Yep.
Now about to play each other.
How
wild is that?
Yeah. So Manning Academy. Another funny thing was Eli was making so much fun of his dad, Archie, he tweeted out a text he got from his dad, laughing at his dad, saying, "You're such a baby boomer." His dad sent him a text and then signed it Archie.
Oh, wow.
So Eli thought that was hilarious. He said, "You don't have to sign a text. Everyone knows who it's from." So they love making fun of their dad. That's hilarious.
That's good. I love it. I love the Archie family.
I know. The Mannings are hilarious. They were so funny watching with Belichick on the Manning cast when the play where Stafford was getting sacked, and at the last minute he just kind of flicked his wrist, wasn't even looking where he threw it, and they called it
just trying to get rid of it.
They called it a forward pass and wasn't intentional grounding. And the Mannings were saying that is intentional grounding, and it is a fumble, and they actually took it back to the house. So if it had been a fumble, that would have been a pivotal play in the game.
I felt like it was an intentional grounding. That's what I felt, but
I thought it was
everyone had their own opinion. Yeah.
Flicking your wrist at the end as you're getting thrown to the ground it's not a pass. Like that wasn't a pass. But anyway, let's do the mailbag. I've got a couple tonight. These matchups are intense, and your preview captured it perfectly. At Ricardo, this was the NFL playoff bracket breakdown.
That's awesome. Thanks, Ricardo. We try our best to do the research and bring you guys everything we can to break down these matchups. So glad you liked it.
Next one, the stats you shared really add to the playoff picture at Rodney.
Yeah, I agree with that, Rodney. Rob does a fantastic job. He does a lot of work on bringing stats to this program, and just want to compliment him. And I'm glad that you recognized it.
I think stats are really cool because they can tell a lot of the story. You need to watch the games, but go back to the stats afterwards and see if they match what you saw. Sometimes the stats don't really tell a story. For instance, you'll see a quarterback who looks lost all game, and then you go and you see he had 280 yards throwing, one touchdown, no interceptions,
Like
and a
Sam
decent
Darnold. Sam
and a
Darnold, if you
decent
looked at his numbers,
QBR, and you're like, "What are you talking about? That was a terrible game," you know?
if you looked
So,
at Sam Darnold's numbers and his stats from that game, they weren't
yeah,
that bad actually. But
right.
if you watched him play, he was totally ineffective. He was
Well, he was getting
completely switched
sacked
on.
because he was holding the ball. That doesn't show up in a lot of different stats.
Hmm.
So, but when you get sacked 9 times, you have to look at the quarterback and say, "What are you
Right.
doing?"
That's right.
But at the same time, who was open? No one. So, that was just a whole team effort on looking that bad. Um, Last one. This episode really helped me understand the matchups better at Lena. This was the college preview.
That's great. Thanks, Lena. We do our best to bring those matchups, like I said, and especially in the college and pro games. There's just so many great games that have come to us the last couple of weeks. So glad you enjoyed it.
And that's what we got for the mailbag.
That's awesome. Thanks, Robbie.
Not as silly a pick as in the past, by the way.
Not quite as silly, but I thought it was kind of a funny smile you had there.
Yeah.
So, last thoughts about this epic weekend we just went through and about the one that's coming up?
5 days of straight incredible action. Great football players that are a lot are going to NFL. It was epic in so many ways. There was so much fun football. A lot of things happened that we knew were going to happen. There were surprises, and it was just really exciting to see who gets to go on and live for another day, so to speak.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I loved every minute of it. I love the game itself. I love breaking it down. I love watching the highlights. I love watching the reactions afterwards. So I'll flip around and watch different podcasts and different shows just to get their takes on it. And then you just amalgamate all of it into your own opinion. That's what I
Hmm.
love about our show here is that we get to bring to you guys all the stuff that we see when it comes to these games and the aftermath. So it's a lot of fun.
That's right.
Looking forward to this weekend, Robbie, and get to watch some of the football with you. So that's going to be great. And
Hmm.
we've got our college football championship game breakdown coming up later this week. So you guys look for that one. And definitely like this video and subscribe to the channel. And make sure you drop us a comment. You see that the comment and mailbag segment is such a big part of what we love to do at the end of the program. So make sure you fill up Robbie's bag.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everybody, very much. Have a great week and a great weekend of sports. And we'll see you next time on the Sports Guys. Thanks, guys.